So my own radar start picking up items going 3,000–4,000 miles an hour in this area.
But I do remember speeds in excess of 4,000 to 5,000 miles an hour.
And he said it was traveling 10,000 miles plus.
And they were going somewhere in the neighborhood of 11,000 to 14,000 miles an hour.
They covered the distance from Columbus to Detroit in something like equivalent of about 20,000 miles an hour.
And I heard a couple women there in the Air Force talking about aircraft flying in and out of the atmosphere at Mach 10 plus.
It's not an infrequent occurrence out there. They happen quite often.
There were probably 1,500 reported cases at that time.
I have over 3,000 cases now.
They estimated 100 yards from the left wing was this 100-foot disc.
And the strength of the signal was as strong as the surface contact on the water of an aircraft carrier. This contact was huge.
The size of these objects around 100 meters or greater.
So it would go from 1 o'clock, 7 or 8 miles to 6, 7 o'clock, 7 or 8 miles inside of 4 or 5 seconds. You have to be moving pretty quickly.
They could rise, just go straight up. They could do that, just seemed like instantaneous.
Once they started moving, they went straight up, for a while, and then they went zap.
Then it just sort of disappeared. It dematerialized.
And left the atmosphere, just was gone. It just took off into space.
It just left at high speed.
He said, "You are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this never happened."
And you never saw this, and I don't exist, and this situation never happened.
I didn't want to look at it any longer than that because I felt that my life was in jeopardy.
So I was beaten, literally hitting in the ribs and pushed, and I was resisting. And I know Sergeant Bustinza was doing the same thing.
Measures have been taken by agencies to terminate people who appear to be inconvenient or troublesome through knowing too much.
A shadowy government with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fundraising mechanism, and the ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and free from the law itself.
I am prepared to state that I have been at locations where craft of unknown origin that did not originate on the face of this planet was there. I am prepared to state that while I was there, we saw living, dead bodies of entities that were not born on this planet.
My name is Dr. Stephen Greer. I am the director of the Disclosure Project, which is a project of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This is a project which we have been working on since 1992, and during this time we have identified over 400 military, intelligence, and corporate witnesses to special access projects within the United States and elsewhere that deal with what the public has called UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, and advanced energy and propulsion systems. The purpose of this executive briefing is to put together some of this witness testimony. I want to emphasize that out of the over 400 witnesses whom we have identified, that we have interviewed to date on camera approximately 100. Of those, 120 hours of videotape have been created of testimony from these witnesses. This executive summary can only contain a very small tip of the iceberg, less than 0.5% of the possible testimony which we have. But it will give you an idea of the extent of the knowledge of these men and women who have come forward heroically to tell the world, to tell our elected representatives and our scientists the truth about a subject which has been the subject of much ridicule, fantasy, and speculation for over 50 years. The technologies which are in compartmented secret programs that have been derived from studying extraterrestrial technologies as well as human innovations, which deal directly with energy generation and propulsion systems, are technologies which would enable the entire planet to begin to work in an integrated function and in a way that does not lead to greater and greater spiraling gaps between the rich and the poor. Beyond this, there is something of even greater concern. One of the witnesses whom you will hear from is a person who worked directly with Wernher von Braun, the very famous rocket scientist and space explorer, who warned on his deathbed that there were people planning to put weapons in space or to have space-effective weapon systems, which would be used in a hoax scenario from a threat, a hoax threat, that would be of extraterrestrial origin. There is no evidence that we are under any threat from any civilization from outside our solar system or within our solar system. However, there is a lot of evidence from this testimony that there are people who are deliberately trying to weaponize space under the guise of many situations which are really hoaxed scenarios. This is dangerous because if we are not alone in the universe, we cannot view space as our own private domain for Homo sapiens. We must view space as a frontier which must be shared peacefully with diverse life forms from throughout the universe. I should emphasize that this human testimony is key, and in a sense is more important than any physical evidence because it is multiple, it is corroborating, and it can not be tossed out in a cavalier fashion. We should be very careful that we do not ignore this testimony because the testimony of these men and women serves as a significant body of evidence with corroboration of photographs and other government documents.
Basically because of my counterintelligence training and police work in an outfit called Office of Special Investigations. Since I had one of the few pilot-trained investigators, I ended up doing a lot of investigations of unusual aircraft accidents in which sabotage was suspected, and as a consequence became acquainted with some outstanding scientists and worked with the Air Technical Intelligence Center on a project called Grudge. At that time, Office of Special Investigations was a worldwide investigative unit in the Air Force and were given the responsibility of investigating what became known as unidentified flying objects. And my job was to hand carry these reports over to the technical center and coordinate them with the project officer, answer any questions from an investigative viewpoint that I could assist on. Some of the objects reported were tracked on radar. We had objects with four-way confirmation: ground visual, ground radar, airborne visual, airborne radar. And so far as I'm concerned, you don't get no better than that. I do remember speeds in excess of 4,000 to 5,000 miles an hour, which were far in excess of any known aircraft that we had or any of the enemies. There's no question, I've seen radar photographs of organized flights of unidentified objects, balls of light, if you will. And these were on radar, ground, visual, ground radar, airborne visual, airborne radar. Now the airborne visual, strangely enough, by the time they get a couple fighters down there, those things apparently disappeared whenever they wanted to.